Welcome to the weekly edit. And I am so genuinely excited to say that out loud. And the kind that comes from knowing that this is the right room, it's the right time, and you are the right people. Now, if you are here, it tells me something about you. It tells me that you're not done. You just maybe a bit tired. You are being stretched. Maybe you feel a little worn around the edges, but somewhere inside of you, there is still a quiet knowing that more is possible. Not more pressure, not more hustle, but more alignment, more expansion, more of you. And that's exactly what the weekly edit is about. So, this is a space where we are going to be deliberately refining how you think, how you choose, and how you relate to yourself and your life. And I want to start with something foundational because it's the beginning of the year, and most of us have them, and that is your goals. Or more specifically, I want to speak about your relationship with your goals. So, because what I see time and time again with parents, especially parents who carry a lot emotionally and physically and practically, you stop letting yourself want things. So, not in an obvious way, you don't say, I'm done wanting. You say things like, I'm just going to be realistic this year, or I'm keeping things simple, or I don't want to get my hopes up, or I'm just focusing on getting through. And I understand, I truly do. Because when you're a parent, especially when your kiddo has extra needs, they need a lot of support. Life has a way of humbling you very quickly. You learn to manage your expectations, you learn to brace, you learn not to tempt disappointment, but over time, something subtle happens. You don't just manage your expectations, you lower your desire. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. So imagine for a moment that a genie shows up and she says, you get one wish, not three, just one wish. And you don't have to justify it. You don't have to tell me why you want it. You don't have to explain. Just tell me what you want. And instead of immediately answering, most people hesitate. They say things like, well, I don't know. I'm going to need more time to think about it. Can I think about it? What would be realistic to want? And this hesitation tells us something really, really important. It's not that you don't deserve to want something. It's that you've lost the practice of listening to your own desires. You know what other people need. You know what your family requires. You know what's expected of you. But when it comes to you, it's a little fuzzy. And it's not a character flaw. That's just conditioning. That's years of prioritizing everybody else, prioritizing your safety, stability, and survival over expanding yourself. So if this is the year that you find yourself saying, I'm not really setting any goals, or I'm just going to chill, or I'll see what happens, I want you to be a little bit more curious, more so than judgmental. So, what if that's not peace? What if that is just protecting yourself? Listen, big goals make people super uncomfortable. Not because they're unrealistic, but because they force you to confront who you would have become, who you'd have to become. And when you're already tired and you're already stretched and you're already managing a full emotional load, the idea of becoming more can feel exhausting rather than exciting. So instead of saying, I'm afraid to hope, we say, I'm just not that ambitious anymore. I'm just going to chill. But it doesn't mean hustling or pushing or burning yourself out. Ambition simply means the desire to do something challenging. So not pushing, not chaotic, none of that. Challenging in a way that expands your identity. And if you don't allow yourself to want something bigger than your current life, your life is just going to keep replicating itself. And not because you're failing, just because your, your growth requires contrast. Without a meaningful stretch, there is no evolution in your life. So, one of the biggest mistakes people also make with goal setting is they make too many. Now, this year, I want you just to pick one big goal. You can have a bunch of little ones, but I want you to have one big one that you want to focus on. And it needs to make you feel slightly nervous when you write it down. And if your brain says, oh, yeah, that's totally doable, I can do that. That's not the big one. Okay. A good goal creates a little bit of internal wobble and a quite, who do I think I am? This may be too much. I don't know how I do that. So that's the problem. That's obvious. That's not a problem. That's a signal. It means that the goal is big enough to stretch your identity. And I want to be clear here. This goal doesn't need to be flashy. It doesn't need to impress anyone. It doesn't need to be about money or productivity or achievement or any of that. It just needs to matter to you. Okay. Now, most people will only work with half of what makes the goals sustainable. They focus on the result. I want to lose the weight. I want to make more money. I want that relationship. I want that house. And yes, the results matter, but there's another side of the coin that often gets ignored, and that's the process. If you love the idea of the result, but you kind of resent the process required to get there, your motivation is going to collapse. You might feel inspired for a week, maybe two, but then the resistance is going to start setting in. And not because you're lazy, and not because, no, because your immune system doesn't feel safe in the process. So instead of asking the question only, do I want this result? I want you to ask, who would I need to become to pursue this with kindness towards myself? Can I respect the pace? Can I expect discomfort without attacking myself? Can I allow learning instead of perfection? Because the people who create extraordinary lives are not the ones who avoid discomfort. They are the ones who befriend the process. Now, let me say something that might be a little counterintuitive. The most valuable part of achieving the goal is not the achievement. It's not. It's who you become along the way. The confidence that you build, the trust, the self-respect, the capacity, the emotional capacity, the emotional steadiness. These are earned through the process, not from the results. So you don't become more grounded because you crossed the finish line. You become more grounded because you showed up on the days when you didn't feel like it. And you did it without cruelty, without beating yourself up. And that's especially important for us parents, because if your life is built entirely around holding it together for everyone else, your goals can start to feel just like another obligation. And that's not what we're going to be doing here. It's about choosing the goal that gives back to you, a goal that builds you rather than drains you. Now, of course, this is where a lot of people stop. They go, I don't know how to do this. You've got your goal, but now they say, I don't know how. I need a plan. I need some advice. Somebody needs to tell me. And while this guidance is helpful, You don't need certainty to begin. You just need the willingness to experiment. Because every meaningful result or achievement follows the same pattern. You guess, you try, you observe, you adjust, you try again, you fail, you get up, you try something different. That's it. And no one knows how it will unfold. You only understand the path after you've walked it, And if your brain tells you that you're not allowed to start until you're confident, I want you to know that as fear wearing a reasonable outfit. Confidence is built through movement and not planning. And you may not achieve your goal this year. You may not. But that doesn't mean that you failed. If you aimed for something meaningful and you showed up with integrity, you are still going to be changed profoundly. If you aim to make $100,000 and you only made $95,000, you didn't lose. And if you aimed for a new identity and you found yourself halfway there, you didn't digress, you didn't regress, you expanded. And the skill that you build, the trust that you develop in yourself, the emotional maturity you cultivate, those stay with you. That's why we don't set goals to punish ourselves. We set goals to meet ourselves. Now, another thing I just wanted to mention quickly is goal shame. Now, my coach was actually speaking about it today. This shows up when you want something really big, but you don't yet fully believe that you're allowed to want it. You worry that people will judge you. You worry that you're going to look foolish. You worry that you're going to disappoint yourself. So you downplay the desire. You minimize the dream. You keep it vague. But owning your desire is part of the work. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to justify it. You don't have to make it sense to anybody, you don't have to make it make sense to anyone else. But you do need to let yourself want it without apology, because shame contracts and expansion requires openness. Okay, so I'll share my goal this year. Now, this year, my primary goal is to grow my business. Now, I do have a monetary goal, but more than anything else is about how I want to show up while I am building something really good, because I am behind the scenes. I am revamping everything. So I've never done that before. I don't know how it's going to work out or how it's going to unfold. And I have a lot to learn because I am so excited about something that I'm working on for you guys. And I want it to be so good. And I've never done that before. And when I say it out loud, those familiar voices show up. Like, who do I think I am? What if it's terrible? What if no one cares? And instead of fighting those thoughts, I just let them be there, because it's not a stop sign. It's just part of the process. And I've fallen in love not just with the idea of growing my business, but with who I am becoming in the process. The discipline, the creativity, the capacity, the discomfort, that's what makes the goal meaningful. So here's what I want to invite you to do. This week, choose one goal, write it down, make it specific, and let it scare you a little. Then ask yourself, how can I pursue this with respect for myself? What would loving the process look like? And how can this goal support who I'm becoming, not who I think I should be? You don't need to rush. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to be honest. And if you stay with me in the weekly edit, if you keep listening and you're reflecting and refining, I promise you this. You are not going to be the same at the end of the year. Not because we forced change, but because we allowed you to expand. And that changes everything. All right, my friends, I would love your comments. I would love you to reply to this email and let's discuss. I will see you next week.